Good morning and welcome to Shooting Straight with me, Voice of the Forge. For those who do not know who I am or who Forgotten Forge Games is, it is simple. I'm known as Voice of the Forge because I talk a lot and I'm the most politically opinionated. And whilst most of the opinions I hold are shared with the group, not all of them are. And today I want to talk about abuse. It is a very serious topic which I do not think gets enough publicity when men are on the receiving end of it. And I think it becomes a joke, it becomes something which they are told to man up and told to stop being a cuck, stop being a beta male, and these are things that we have seen in a very short time, unfortunately, with another streamer called Boogie. And yes, I am referring to VidCon. Now, for those who have had a charitable expression for Anita Sarkeesian, they said that she went off script and that she wasn't very good off script, and that Sargon of Akkad flustered her and made her it threw her to the point where she did not have full control over what she was saying, and she basically said some stuff that she shouldn't have said. That is the charitable excuse. I turn round and say, bollocks. The face that she pulled, and there are plenty of pictures out there, the face that she pulled was one of disgust, anger, and you just knew that she was going to ride it for all that it was worth. And I'm even more disgusted with Feminist Frequency and VidCon's response to the fact that she turned around and abused someone and then basically got an apology from the organisers because apparently she's the victim. She was the one sat in the privileged position on the panel, and Sargon and others were merely in the audience, and they had stated that that is what they were there to do, was to listen to what she had to say. Now, if she had a script, then she should have been able to use it. I mean, one of the things with Shooting Straight is that I don't use a script. That's why it's called Shooting Straight. Shooting straight from the lip. Everything that I say it's been researched beforehand, but I've left it to stew in my noggin, so that I've thought it over, thought it through, thought about what I want to say, and then when the time is right and I feel that the ideas are fermented enough, that I can then pour forth my bounty and my thoughts on a situation. So the fact that she turns around and says that she's no good off script, I think, is a massive cop-out, because the worst that can happen is you can stand there shaking like a leaf and still get through your script. I know, I've done it, I've been there. For her to turn around and call someone names is abysmal. But it's not the worst. Sargon is a big boy. I've met him. He can take it on the chin. He can move it forward, and he can defend himself. What I really, really object to is what happened next with Boogie. Now, he has stated that he has a general anxiety disorder. I have one as well, though I don't think mine is as bad as Boogie's. But it's still pretty fucking horrible. And I can empathise a lot with what he's saying. Part of my recovery was to try and do a law degree. Now, I finished the first year. Unfortunately, my mental health has deteriorated and I'm having to take a year out of study because my mental health is up and down. But again, standing up in front of people, doing something, was something that I felt I had to do, was something I felt I had to achieve in order to combat some of the anxieties that I felt, because it's something I used to do before I had the diagnosis. Speaking in public is something that doesn't bother me as much as it does other people. Far be it for me to say it's something I can do well. It's something that I can do better than a lot of people with far less preparation, and I don't mind making a tit of myself. So if I say something that it doesn't quite jibe, I can roll with it, I can pick up the pieces if I drop things, and I can interact with an audience, whereby if something is a little bit, oh yeah, I didn't actually mean to say that, I can go back, reword things and work with people in order to get things done. So that's why I do this. This is part of my healing process. And I dare say it's part of Boogie's healing process as well. Now, what happened was he said that he was walking on eggshells before he attended the panel because Anita Sarkeesian was going to be on there. And for me, it immediately set off alarm bells. Forget everything else that happened afterwards, just the fact that he did what he did to speak to other panel members, run it by his friends and family and everything else to make sure what he said couldn't be seen as an attack. So what I did was I looked up emotional abuse from the Psychology Today about eggshell relationships. Now, if you've done anything in law, then you are aware of eggshell skull and taking victims of things as you find them. And just because someone has an eggshell skull doesn't mean to say that they have any less of a duty. You'd have less of a duty of care to them than anything else, and it also means you don't know any more duty of care either. Because if it had been enough to kill someone normally, and they had an eggshell skull, then yeah, that's it. It's done for. But in terms of relationships, this is especially worrying because of the recent changes in law to domestic violence in the UK, and I dare say other places like Canada. Not sure about the US, but where domestic violence no longer has to be physical. It can be emotional, and things like controlling behaviour, controlling how someone dresses, controlling money, and other things like withdrawing affection and things like that, which apparently now are now grounds to be arrested for an emotional violence within intimate relationships. And whilst looking through the Psychology Today, I found a whole series of words. Now, not all of these are going to be descriptive for what happened. Not all of these are going to be relevant, but I want people to bear these in mind, as these are common descriptors for people who consistently demonstrate them, where they can be considered emotionally unstable. Now, I know for a fact that a lot of these apply to me, and have applied to me for quite some time. This is why I'm on medication, and I dare say that Boogie would understand a fair few of these as well, which is why he's on medication, and he has the diagnoses that he supports, supports him. And I would imagine that despite the fact that some of these would apply, and not all of them will, I doubt very much that he's in a position where he's an emotional abuser. However, if we go back to what basically lit the fuse wire for the Gamers Are Dead articles, which caused Gamergate to erupt, we had another abuser be called out by the survivor of her abuse, and who's still getting shit for it today, because again, if this is a sexist thing, men are the abuser, they're not the abused, and this is something which is still very much up in the air. So I just want you to sit back and listen to these words and see how many of them you can apply to a certain AS who was on a VidCon panel who abused Sargon of Akkad. Here we go. Angry, bitter, chaotic, clingy, complainer, confusing, controlling, critical, cruel, dangerous, deceptive, delusional, dehumanizing, demanding, demeaning, denigrating, desperate, destructive, depressive, disconnected, disorganized, disquieting, draining, drama queen or king, dysfunctional, emotional, envious, erratic, exasperating, explosive, fear-inducing, frightening, frustrated, frustrating, hysterical, imbalanced, impossible, impulsive, inappropriate, incomplete, inconsistent, irrational, irritable, irritating, malevolent, malignant, masochistic, mean, mental, mercurial, miserable, moody, morbid, nasty, perplexing, rage-filled, resentful, sarcastic, scary, seething, seesaw, suffocating, suicidal, tantrums, tempestuous, tense, threatening, tiresome, tormented, tormentor, tornado, train wreck, tumultuous, turbulent, uncaring, undependable, unforgiving, unhappy, unhinged, unpredictable, unreasonable, unreliable, unstable, untrusting, vengeful, vindictive, violent, volatile, and wound up. This list is not a diagnostic tool, but it is said that someone who consistently demonstrates a minimum of 8 from that list can be considered emotionally unstable. The more that you have on the list, the more likely it is that they are unstable, and the more unstable that they are. And the reason this is important, and the reason why I pull this out, is because these are the traits that victims describe as being the behaviours that their partner have exhibited whilst in the relationship. And it's 1 minute everything seems fine, the next there's an explosive outburst from the slightest of provocations. And that seems to me exactly what happened with Boogie. He was walking on eggshells. Already she has a personality which you can look at from those descriptors and go, wow, this is why Boogie was walking on eggshells. So straight away, she has created an unsafe space on that panel for one of the people that has been subject to cyberbullying, really subjected to cyberbullying, and other kinds of bullying through his whole life, from what he's been saying as well, from a variety of different people. The poor guy has had it hard. So he's gone into that, and she has been the one that he has been taking extra special steps not to set off. That in itself is a massive red flag to her personality. Then, apparently, everything seems to go okay on the panel. She then tears into him afterwards. Yeah, they have a discussion afterwards. But that's what happens in relationships. Oh, I'm so sorry, darling. I didn't mean to do this, that, and the other. Please, let's sit down and talk about it. I promise I'll never do it again. And the very fact that Boogie feels the fact that he has to defend himself because of so-called privilege, and everything else, builds into the narrative of someone who has been successively abused. Someone had pointed out in comments Stockholm syndrome, and it's not far from it. When you have been battered down by successive arguments or successive partners, or by life in general, you seek to appease, you seek to make life as quiet and as comfortable as possible by doing anything you can not to set the other person off. And this is a classic example of someone who has been abused behaving in exactly the same way as someone who has been in such an abusive relationship, to confrontation outside of that relationship. And I can quite honestly say, from what has happened with Boogie, that Anita Sarkeesian is an abuser. She abused Boogie. They slotted into those roles almost as if there is some kind of mental process which identified Boogie as a victim, and she slotted right in there and went, bam, I don't like what you said, I will tear your head off because of this, that and the other. And I personally believe that privilege is bollocks. There's only one kind of privilege in this life, and that's fucking money. That's it. The rest of it is where you've made it or failed on your own merits or despite problems or anything else. The rest of this privilege is bullshit, it's made up, it's only come along in the last 10 years, and it is crap. It is not even a theory, it is a hypothesis which has failed to meet its burden of proof. But this is the problem. We have to call out abusive behaviour and abusive people as we see them, otherwise they get away with it. I am not touching anything to do with Sargon. He's big enough and ugly enough to stand up for himself, and I'm sure he won't mind me saying that. But when it comes to Boogie, you can, if it was a woman, you would be riding in there on your white knight, charging full tilt, stop her abusing her. It's written all over it, but because it's a man, everybody is, oh yeah, he can do what he likes. They're treating Boogie and Sargon as equals, and unfortunately, due to the life that that Boogie has been dealt, due to the hand that he's been dealt, and the best fist he's making of it, and by God, he's doing well, because he's actually managing to go to VidCon. He's making his videos. He's got the support and a community behind him, which I think is absolutely awesome. What I don't want to see is someone like Sarkeesian get her hooks in and become an abuser to him. I want this called out for what it is. I want people to know what is going on. I want people to stand up and be counted. I want people to look at this and actually make this a hill to die on when it comes to Sarkeesian, because if we do not, then Boogie and others are in danger, not only from the power of the individual that Sarkeesian has, but the fact that she's on things like the Trust and Safety Council, she has the ear of other developers, all this, that and the other, and she's calling for YouTubers that she doesn't agree with to be blacklisted. This is important. We cannot let an abuser walk away from this. We cannot leave Boogie unsupported, and we have to call out this bad behaviour here and now before she is able to gain any more power than she already has. She is in the position of having a voice. I don't. I've got less than 100 followers. I make my videos because I want to. But I also think that if someone picks this up, maybe, just maybe, if I can spark one person and they've got a following of 1,000 and they can take the voice and message forward and maybe something gets done, then maybe, just maybe, being a lone voice in the wilderness might actually see some change. Think on this. Eggshell relationships. When you have to tiptoe around to make sure that things are okay all the time and that someone doesn't get set off by the slightest provocation, this is important. She needs help, Boogie needs help, and we cannot allow this person to get away with abusing others, especially when they have needs of their own. She needs professional help. She needs to be called out, and she needs to understand that she is not in the right purely because she has a vagina. Because that's real fucking privilege. I'm a woman, therefore. Bollocks. Stand up for Boogie. Stand up against Sarkeesian. She was part of the reason why Gamergate was as vociferous as it was, and this is something that needs to be called out again. We have someone in a position of power punching down to someone who doesn't have that kind of power, someone who needs protection, and someone who has been abused. This needs to stop. Thank you very much for listening. I am Voice of the Forge. As always, if you want to get in contact with me, please do. You can find me on Twitch, on Twitter, on YouTube, on various other media hosting platforms. If you want to take this message forward, then please do. Let me know so that I can let other people know. And I hope that you've enjoyed listening, and I hope that we will be able to effect some change. Who knows? Maybe this is the straw that broke the camel's back. Thank you very much for listening, and good night.